All right, welcome everybody. After another, this is getting to be routine, Ken. The Jets loss after Jets loss after Jets loss. I had felt like this team had potentially turned a corner after that Calgary game. Not that I was overly impressed by Calgary in that game. I wasn't. I thought they kind of laid an egg, but at the same time, I thought the Jets were saying all the right things. I thought they were doing all the right things. At practice, they looked like they were back, but I'm starting to wonder how emotionally damaged this team is after seeing them tonight. It looked like for long stretches of the game, they were the better of the two teams. Is this just simply a team that's squeezing the stick too hard? Or, I mean, are we at the point where the panic button needs to be absolutely mashed, like the like button on the Kenny and Renny shows?
Well, I think there's no doubt that the fans are smashing it for sure, and we understand why that is the case. I don't see signs of panic necessarily from the Jets. Again, a couple of preventable errors, a couple of miscues. I'm not quite sure I would call it a brutal game. I mean, the Jets, one thing we've been talking about the Jets all year long is that their inability to generate enough scoring chances. The Jets don't shoot enough. Well, tonight they generated 40 shots on goal. So Demko definitely played well. I think they could create some more dangerous chances. There's no doubt about that. But, I mean, again, I would say that the Jets, I don't see panic because the Jets aren't abandoning their pursuit of team defense. So, yes, there were a couple of errors that were obviously critical. But, again, we'll get to Heinola in a moment. But I think that his ability to respond to that turnover that led to the first goal was incredibly important for him. I thought his game was excellent after that play. And again, I heard a lot of folks suggesting that, well, those are the kind of errors that wouldn't be made now if he'd been playing in the NHL all year. Well, no, that's the exact reason why Heinola spent time in the American League. Those are mistakes that can be made. This is not on-the-job training. Those are the mistakes that should be made at the American League level. What I would say, though, is that I love the way that Heinola, and I tweeted about it at the time. I said, the last thing Ville Heinola can do after making an error like that ends up in the back of the net is get tentative. He needed to be assertive, and that was exactly what he did for the rest of the game. I really liked what I saw from him. In terms of the offense, Sean, hey, it's gone way past. If there's squeezing the stick to be done, what you see right now is sawdust. 17 goals in 10 games. That's not enough. Sure, brutal game. Well, it's different to say brutal game or brutal inability to score. Well, to me, that's two different things. I mean, I understand it's a brutal result for Jets fans, but the Jets have played a lot worse during this stretch of 9 of 10, and I'm not out here saying, hey, applaud effort. Effort is the starting point. That's it. What we did see, what was an important development for the Jets, is that Kyle Connor, who had been going through an incredible rough patch, only 8 shots on goal during a 7-game drought, he was as dangerous or more dangerous than he had been in weeks. And in order for the Jets to have any chance in a playoff series, they need Kyle Connor operating at peak levels and scoring goals. Would he feel better if he had scored on the breakaway or the rebound chance? Of course, but I mean, he at least broke the drought, and that's the first step for him.
I want to highlight a couple comments here. Brent Palchuk says they have been working on team defense for 2.5 years. Maybe they don't have the coach or players. Earlier on, Brent Palchuk again says coach is still working on the things he was worried about from the beginning of the year. What in the world have they been working on? See, I don't think he specifically said that he's been working on the things they've been worried about. He said, I'm still worried about the same things that I've been worried about at the beginning of the year. And Ken, I don't know if you pick up on the same things that I pick up on, or if I'm picking up on something that's not there. But to me, that's a comment that the thing that this team has had to worry about since day one has been what they've got on the back end and trying to figure out a way to make that work. And I wonder how much of everything that we see from the decisions that are made in the style of play they have to the comments that we have recently about this team needing to figure out its defensive game and can't focus on the offensive game right now, and the decisions we've made about bringing players like Heinola up or Stanley up or keeping Bo in the lineup as long as they did. How much of this has to do with just the fact that maybe Paul Maurice feels like he's trying to mask an undermanned or incapable defensive group?
Well, I mean, certainly we're seeing some changes late in the year, and those changes including in incorporating young players. So we know that that has not been a primary choice at times. I like the fact that Hanel has been playing. I think that I don't want to see him taken out of the lineup because he made one error and he was on for the first two goals. The second goal, I mean, it wasn't really much that he could do about that. No. I mean, that's not his guy on the trailer there. The interchange, he was playing on his offside. I thought he handled it pretty well. Still got involved. The things that he does well were still strengths in the game. Puck moving was very good. And again, like I said, the fact that he didn't get tentative after making an error early is incredibly important for him. DeMello Morrissey, we got to see a lot of that. Sorry, back to original question, Sean. The Jets need Neil Pionk in their lineup. Then their defense score is noticeably better. Now, the decisions that will be made regarding the third pairing and how the rest of the pieces fit, that's what's going to be interesting, right? When it comes to going up, most likely against Connor McDavid. Can they find pairings that are adequate in those series? I mean, we know they haven't been able to shut down McDavid to the tune of 22 points in 9 games. Can he trust Heinola enough to get him in the lineup? Logan Stanley, I thought, was very good tonight. So, I mean, is there a chance? I mean, we saw it tonight for the first time. Is there a configuration that potentially can include Stanley and Heinola when it comes to the playoffs? I mean, we're going to find out. Whether it's in Game 1 or Game 2, we'll see.
I'm going to bring in Scott the Flute Billick here. If you missed the last time he was on, he was drinking from the fanciest water glass that I've ever seen in my life. Probably doesn't have it here today. Drinking out of the regular coffee cup. Scott, your take on where this team is defensively, and I'm going to try and give you a narrow down a question for you here. The thing that I thought when I saw that play made by Ville Heinola where he turned the puck over, and I mean earlier in that shift he pinched and created a 2-on-1 that they were lucky to get away with. It wasn't the best shift for him. I agree with Kenny. He got better, especially after he went with Derek Forbert. But I don't necessarily think that it was his best example of a game, body positioning wise, puck moving wise. I'm not trying to crap on the kid or anything like that, but I'll say this. I hear from Paul Maurice down the stretch here when he talks about, them not so much worrying about getting their offense going, but finding a way to be a defensive team that can shut down the likes of McDavid or Matthews. When I heard that, it sounds to me as though he doesn't have much hope that this is a team that could outdo those teams offensively. And what I was saying to Ken before we got on here is I feel like that puts a whole lot of pressure on this team to be perfect defensively. If they can't get the offense going, they need to be perfect defensively. I wonder how much Paul Maurice believes that, and I wonder if one of the reasons he's shied away from a guy like Heinola before this is because rookie mistakes like what you saw from him tonight are what you can expect from a young player, and that maybe that's the kind of thing that just took the Jets out of this game before they had a chance to get in it.
Yeah, and first of all, hello, chat. And yes, I look like the burglar from Home Alone. Yeah.
That's the next YouTube account creation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know, Sean. Like, I'm struggling after this one because I just don't know. I feel like even the questions that were asked were just we're grasping for straws here to try and find something, try and find a positive out of that game, or try and find a reason why the Jets aren't doing what they're supposed to do in hockey games. And is it Ville Heinola's fault that he made a rookie mistake and that's why? Is it Ville Heinola's fault that he's on the top pairing with Josh Morrissey and we haven't seen that this year other than back a couple games, right? But I don't know. I mean, Blake Wheeler said tonight he's running out of adjectives. I think we all are. In terms of what the issues are for this team. I don't think they rest at the feet of Ville Heinola. I think this team is trying to overcompensate for its poor defensive play. It's sacrifice. I said this. Kenny can attest this. I've said this for a while now. I mean, they're sacrificing offense for defense, and it's just not working, right? Like you just don't have the group here to play that team defensive game. Like, and maybe you do in spurts, maybe you do in 1 or 2 games, but you don't have it consistently. I don't think they can do it for 4 games. I don't think they can do it for 7 games. The strengths of this team are, and I know I was listening to Kenny in the post-game show, and he was talking about their identity. I think it's their strengths. Their strengths is a high-octane offense and great goaltending. I mean, at what point do you just have to kind of abandon this trying to play defense and go ahead and just try and outgun a team? Like, I don't know. I don't think you can outgun Connor McDavid. But what else are you supposed to do? You're trying to grind teams out, because they've been trying to grind teams out now for they're 8. They've lost 9 of the last 10 trying to grind teams out. It's not working, right? Like, well, I mean,
I think you bring up a good point. I mean, is this the team that is built to win that style of game? And I wonder the same thing that you wonder, Scott. Is here the Jets are supposed to be deep. They're supposed to have the ability to score. It's clearly not there right now, and maybe that's why he's taking this tact at the end of the year. But really, is this a team that is going to be able to get past the likes of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers by being a defensive juggernaut?
No, not in the slightest. Because how? Like, show me. They can't even beat Ottawa or Vancouver trying to do this. So you think they're going to beat a team that is two teams that are far superior than they are right now? Like, no, then those, like Vancouver and Ottawa, like I get that Ottawa's, played better recently, and the Vancouver's, they had their, well, I'm not going to call it a rest time, because that's disrespectful. It certainly wasn't that. But, you can't be losing to these teams. I don't understand. Like, tell me, and I know this has been said on your show before. I think Hammer talked about it last time he was on, but it's like, what from tonight would lead you to suggest that the Jets are going to beat Edmonton in any game in that series? Like, well, yeah, they put up 40 shots, sure. Vancouver's not a great defensive team, and we know that. So yeah, they gave out, they had Thatcher Demko goalied them tonight. Well, Mike Smith has goalied them all season. Like, I don't understand where we're trying to pull hope from. And I'm like, I know this is going to get, some of the chat isn't going to like it, but I don't know where the hope is coming from for this team heading into the playoffs. You have 2 games. So let's say they win 2 games going into the playoffs. They beat Vancouver. Maybe they beat Toronto. I mean, I think beating Toronto might, I think the psychological boost may come from, yeah, exactly. I think the psychological boost can come from beating a Toronto, even if Toronto is, not as manned as they normally be, the resting players. Like, I mean, you need to show that you can beat somebody. I mean, you beat Calgary, but we would all agree that Calgary didn't show up for that game.
Calgary was a no-show.
Exactly, right? So if in your last 10 games you've beaten one team that was a no-show, I don't understand. Like, the losing streak to me, obviously it's not 10 games at this point, but it's 9 games and you beat a team that no-showed a game. So I don't understand where they're going to find it. I don't understand where they're going to extract the emotion that they need. I mean, it's obviously lacking. I don't think they've quit on Paul Maurice, because you don't put up 40 shots on a team and quit. So I don't think there's a quit there on the coach. But they don't have any confidence right now. I mean, Kyle Connor scores a goal, sure, but then he can't bury one on the breakaway, and that's his bread and butter. I mean, we watched Kyle Connor in the shootout. He puts that one move on goal. He beats every single one of them. Didn't have that tonight. He got stopped twice. So I'm struggling to find anything positive to say coming out of these last 10 games, because other than the fact that you beat a team 4-0, and that was great, but that didn't do anything for this team. You came out a couple nights later and lost to Ottawa.
Ken, where are you drawing hope for this team?
I mean, it's not my job to draw hope, but again, this is what I
would say. Well, where would you? Sorry, where?
Sorry, no, I know what you're saying.
Reverse of devil's advocate.
Sorry, yes.
I don't mean to set you up to look like a homer. I just mean to say
it's okay.
No problem.
No
you
problem.
have to play that side of it. Yeah.
The accusations will be flying friendly enough. So, to me, guys, so on the first goal, drop pass at the blue line, can't do that. On the second goal, Tanner Pearson quite simply beats Derek Forward to a loose puck and gets it out in front to a wide open Bo Horvat. That is an easily correctable play. On the last one, I mean, again, Höglander, excellent job. But again, Jets power. How can the Jets win a series? Very simply. That's not to say it will be simple.
No.
Hang on. No.
Choose a better word,
the formula is very simple.
Fine.
Connor Hellebuck needs to outplay Mike Smith. The Jets' power play, which is very stagnant, almost bordering on dormant, needs to perform. And then a lot of the snake-bitten forwards would need to convert the opportunities that are there. For the last 7 games, Kyle Connor has not been a dangerous player. Tonight, listen, I didn't blame him. I'm just saying Kyle Connor is the Jets' leading scorer. He was not dangerous for 7 games. Tonight he was dangerous. He scored a goal, said it himself. Hopefully that gives him some confidence. Mark Scheifele, 6 shots on goal. Again, that line wasn't rolling, but they generated. Stastny, very good on the line with Lowry. I thought, with Lowry.
Right,
Appleton, great chance in tight. Pierre-Luc Dubois played well. I mean, I didn't think that line clicked great, but I did say that line showed some signs. Do the Jets need a miracle? Sure, you can call it a miracle if you want to. Here's the other thing. Kyle Connor also referenced the Jets being an underdog. When's the last time the Jets were an underdog? 2018 against Nashville?
I didn't think they were. The way they went into the playoffs down the stretch, I didn't see them being. Kenny, I actually remember.
So 2015 then.
No.
Last time they were an
underdog against St. Louis.
No chance. They were in second place.
Kenny, come on.
What?
The Jets. This is the way that those teams were going. The Jets were in their nose.
They were not underdog suggests that you have no chance. They were not maybe necessarily rated to. They lost in 6 games.
6 games, whatever. It's I don't know. You're talking.
They were. What I'm saying is they were even. So this year they're clearly not playing at a level as the Oilers. Last time the Jets were an underdog was 2015. Can they find a way to rally around that?
Well, they did in 2015. So.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. What have they learned since that time?
Okay, so hold on. I want to ask a question. Hold on, Scotty. If so let's say, can they find a way to rally around that? Is the question you're asking?
I'm not saying it's an easy solution.
Sure. But if that is something they're rallying around, shouldn't we have seen them to start rallying around that? I mean, at this stage, maybe the biggest concern is and I'll go back to it, Ken. We just talked about it in our Sportsnet chat, which everyone should go check out because it's really, really quality stuff. But in a game where Paul Maurice had said his team needed to come out with emotion, his captain described the game afterwards as blah. That is massively problematic to me. It's massively problematic that we're at a stage where the team knows exactly what it needs to do and it keeps talking about this idea of generating something before the end of the season. I think time's run out. Tomorrow night, they play against the Vancouver Canucks again, a depleted Vancouver Canucks. That's one thing we haven't talked about yet. We can take all the positives we want out of this game. We can talk about them playing better. I thought their forecheck was way better tonight. We could get in and talk about how that happened. But the fact is they're doing this against an overworked, COVID-hit, injury-ravaged Vancouver Canucks team that beat them tonight. So I wonder at what stage we still. I mean, I think the runway is gone. Tomorrow night's game is all about managing to get through that game, finding just some energy just to play that game. But if they beat Vancouver tomorrow night, a COVID-weary, injury-ravaged team in back-to-back games, is that much to hang your hat on? And there's not going to be anything to hang your hat on in that Toronto Maple Leafs game. They have run out of time in the regular season to manufacture this good feeling. So if in this amount of time, like if there was not a sense of urgency tonight to get to that, should we have any faith at all that they can find a sense of urgency for the playoffs that other teams that they're going to be playing against look to have discovered a long time ago?
Yeah, I think it's different. I know somebody, I don't know who it was, JM Sue, saying, I'm too negative. I'm not trying to be negative, but I mean, the facts in front of us don't really, there's nothing to, I mean, you can tell me in the chat what there is to be positive about here, but I'm only going by what I see, and what I see isn't good. I mean, if you look at Pierre-Luc Dubois, 1 point in his last 10 games. Connor, he gets a goal tonight, but 1 point in his last 8. Andrew Kopp, 3 points in his last 8. Paul Stastny, 2 points in his last 6. There's not enough going on here. The guys that you want stepping up, PLD, Kyle Connor, and Andrew Kopp, Paul Stastny. Those are guys that you need going, and they're not going. And some of these guys are veterans on this team, leaders. I just don't understand. I mean, I'm not trying to perpetuate negativity. It's there, like that's what it is right now. And so I don't know how, and I agree with Sean. I mean, we talked about, I think they've run out of time. So now they have to literally flip the proverbial switch come next week sometime. And I know somebody said it tonight, and I don't have the quotes in front of me, but somebody talked about that going on. Maybe it was Wheeler or maybe it was Scheifele. I don't know who it was, but one of them talked about, again, they'll be ready essentially for next week. What would lead anybody to think that that's going to be true? And I get that those guys have to say it because they have to believe it themselves. And I get it. I get the idea that Ehlers is going to help this team by far. That he will help this team, assuming he is back. Now we have to make sure that Nikolai Ehlers is actually ready to go, because he hasn't. We're a week away. He skated with the team, I believe, once, and it was a morning skate. He hasn't practiced with the team. He's not shooting the puck yet, not taking contact. So, I mean, there will be a space. We don't know when the playoffs are exactly starting for the Jets, but Nikolai Ehlers may or may not even be at 100% when he gets back. So that's the other thing. So I'm not trying to be negative, and I'm sorry, Sean. I'm not really answering your question. I'm just trying to
again,
sure
Scotty.
The chat, yeah. But it's not negativity for the sake of being negative, because if the Jets have won 9 of the last 10 coming into this, it would be a completely different story. But we have to go by what we see. I'm not. What kind of rosy picture am I going to paint right now? I don't even have a paintbrush because there's nothing to use, so I just don't know what to do. I mean, Kenny can bring the positivity.
I'm just saying.
TS is about to go off. TS has set Kenny up. He's holding the football. Kenny's going to hit a 70-yarder through the uprights. Here we go, Ken.
I mean, again, I understand there are plenty of problems and issues the Jets to sort through, but in terms of runway, there's no running out of runway until the Jets have lost 4 games in a playoff series. This would not be the first time that a team with an elite-level goaltender got hot, right? Guys, we see it every year. A team that is unexpected to make any type of run. And again, I am not saying the Jets are that team. What I am saying is they have one of the most important qualities required to upset a team in a playoff series. Whether that team has Connor McDavid or not. A team needs elite-level goaltending. Do the Jets have elite-level goaltending? Yes. Is their defense going to be good enough? Team defense or defense core? That's a massive question mark. Is the team that was supposed to have one of the deepest top 9s in the North Division, if not the NHL, going to wake up out of this offensive slumber? That is a big question mark. However, there are tools in that toolbox that could put together the type of game required. Now, what we've also heard about the Jets is these great improvements in their 5-on-5 play. Well, those things had been happening. Now they've given up 6 goals in their last 2 games at 5-on-5. Again, many of those goals were on the stick. The puck was on the stick of a Jets player before the goal was scored by the opponent. So those are correctable issues. Again, I'm not telling you the Jets are primed to go on a ridiculous run, but we also can't ignore the 9 out of 10 losses, but I don't think you can also ignore the fact that the Jets went 42-some games without losing consecutive games. So there is a foundation in there. Can they find it and tap into it? That is a humongous question mark.
I just want to say something quickly before we go on any further. The suggestions in the chat room, and I get it, people want to defend their team or they want to defend their side. We get guys like Scotty on here, and I partnered with Ken for the very reason that we as journalists, it's our job to tell it as we see it. It's not our job to represent the side. And one of the things we know about Scott is Scott comes on here, we know about Ken, they come here and they tell you exactly what they think. So I get the suggestion. I get people talking about negativity. I get as a fan the last thing you want to hear right now is times are dark for the Winnipeg Jets. Sometimes people want to come here and they want to hear that there's positivity. I see a lot of people talking in the chat that this is a rope-a-dope play. If it is, it's going to be a rope-a-dope to rival what Ali did when he did the original rope-a-dope. It is, we're here to tell you things as we entirely see them. So the one thing I would suggest to you, the people that we have on the program, guys like Scott, guys like Hammer, when they come on here, they're telling you exactly what they think. And that's what you're going to get from them. That's why we have them on, and we entirely appreciate it. To back up a little bit and get into the idea of Ken, you're talking about the hope for it. I wonder how much hope exists in that, because what we're looking at right now is a Jets team that we know has offense that can't produce its offense. What I've seen from them as of late is a team with an all-star, maybe world's best goaltender who hasn't been able to play up to that standard lately. And it was brought up in the chat room. Connor Hellebuyck, and I will agree with this, has never stolen a series. We have not seen Connor Hellebuyck get to that level. Now, maybe it's something to strive for, and the kind of guy that he is, who likes a challenge and likes to get there, that's probably someplace he's got to get next. We know he said everything to him from this point in his career is about winning the cup. So maybe he's going to find another level there. I'm just starting to think to myself, if the path to winning in the playoffs is leaning on a goaltender who hasn't been hot down the stretch and leaning on opportunistic scoring that has not existed down the stretch, these are the strengths of this team, and their strengths have been missing down the stretch here. And I just think that idea of relying on that heading into the playoffs is something that is on extremely shaky ground, and I need to see a sign from this team before they go into the playoffs. I know you're right. It's not over till the fat lady sings, but holy smokes, I think I hear her warming up in the back, or maybe the helicopter's getting ready to take off in the back there. Not sure. I want to dig into.
Hang on a second. I'd just be very careful at saying because Hellebuyck hasn't done it in his first 3 playoff series that he can't go on a playoff run. Plenty of goaltenders need multiple opportunities.
I'm saying it's not something that you can definitively rely on at this stage.
Oh, I didn't say definitively, of course. If I'm up here suggesting he's outplayed every goalie in every series he's played, that would not be accurate. So I wouldn't perpetuate that. But again, there are things that goaltenders, it comes at different times for them. And again, Jordan Binnington, that's lightning in a bottle. That doesn't happen often, where in your first crack you go and win 16 games. What do you mean no? Name me another.
Matt Murray 2 years in a row. I mean, it happened.
Tim Thomas wasn't a rookie.
It doesn't matter. He was still lightning in a bottle. I mean, the guy came out of nowhere. Trust me. The Bruins are something I know.
The Bruins are a great team. It wasn't that Tim Thomas just pulled the rabbit out of his hat.
Matt Murray. I mean, those Penguins teams weren't great in terms of their defensive play, but Matt Murray came to the rescue.
Those teams had Crosby and Malkin, Scott.
I just said defensive play, Kenny. But anyways, I'll counter. I just want to counter one thing before we go on. The bad teams that have gone into the playoffs and beaten the good teams usually do so because they go into the playoffs with that playoff mentality already, right? Because they have to grind and battle and get into that 4th place. So they're already kind of, to use a war term, battle hardened already, right? And that's usually why they're able to do that, because the other teams that they're playing, the first place team, for instance, let's say Tampa when it was Columbus, right? The Tampa cruised in the playoffs, win 62 games, match a record for the Detroit from the 97-98 season, and they get steamrolled essentially by a team that was already in that mentality. The Jets are in between both of them. They're not the first place team. They're not fighting for the playoff spot right now, right? Because it's already guaranteed. But they aren't playing their best hockey and haven't been, arguably now for 25 games. If we're going to listen to Paul Stastny, right? And he is arguably the smartest hockey guy in this team. Paul Maurice, after the game, talking because he's going to play his 1,000th game tomorrow. What I'm saying is the Jets aren't coming into the playoffs with any sort of gusto behind them. They're just coming into the playoffs. They're walking in the door, and they're hoping not to get steamrolled by the Oilers. And I think that's what it is.
Well, let's talk about their belief. They keep saying that they have that belief. And I mean, I think based on what they've done in the past, that belief should exist. But is this a team right now that looks like you can have all the belief you want, but there has to be a path out of this. And this, to me, looks like a team that doesn't know where that path is. Would you disagree with that, Ken?
Yeah, I just don't think that they're not showing signs of a team that's mailed it in. That's all I'm saying. I'm
Sure.
definitely not saying they're confident, because they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, this is as morose as we've seen Blake Wheeler, I think, possibly in 10 years. The frustration is real. And again, what would we be saying if the Jets were just out here painting a rosy picture? But at the same time, of course, Mark Scheifele's going to say they still believe in one another.
Yeah.
I mean, if they weren't saying that, we'd be questioning, well, how the hell can you say that publicly? You can't say that, even if you do think it. But again, I don't think it. And again, this is another thing. COVID, man, 56-game season. Hey, if this was an 82-game season, the Jets would miss the playoffs, most likely, based on the nosedive they're currently in. But guess what? It's not. So playoffs can be a completely different thing. Nobody thought the Oilers would lose to Chicago last year. But again, the Jets don't have Jonathan Taves or Patrick Kane in that lineup, but they have Connor Hellebuck. So I think Connor Hellebuck can play better than Corey Crawford did against the Oilers. So again,
can we throw out? This came to my mind. I'm just going to throw it out there. But can we throw out some of the weird stuff that happened in the bubble last season based on the fact that it was teams coming out of a long layup or a long layoff? I mean, I wonder, sometimes I feel like we put too much stock in that, and that basically there's a bunch of time taken off. The Edmonton Oilers were a team that were hot. The Chicago Blackhawks were a team that were on their way out of the playoffs. And then you've got this pedigree inside that room that allows them to play, out of the blue, this playoff game. That they know how to play against a team that's learning how to play that. I mean, the Edmonton Oilers, are they a victim as much as any team last season of that layoff and basically affecting them heading into the playoffs? And because of that, can we maybe throw out some of the ideas that we have of what happened in the bubble last season?
And I'll go, if I can go first. I agree with that, because I think the Jets would have been a more dangerous team in last year's playoffs than they're ever going to be in this year. And the reason for that is, I mean, we were on the road going into Edmonton the day before, the day of, I guess we flew in. And the Jets were in full playoff mode, and they were talking about it like that, right? There was 10 games to go or something like that before the end of the season last year 11. When they rolled into Edmonton, and they ground out a 4-2 win in Rogers Arena there, or Rogers, whatever it's called, one of the Rogers ones. Yeah. And they ground out that win, and that team looked like a team that had come together after a very tough year. They had their identity. It was very grindy. We knew that. I mean, we watched it. They weren't. It was a different time. I think the Oilers were the same way. Even the Vancouver Canucks at that point, where the Jets were going to go and play before kind of COVID hit and shut down everything. I think a lot of the teams that were really on good runs, like the Jets were, in terms of just the style of play that they had to play at that time, lost all that because you didn't play for the next 3 months or 4 months or whatever it was eventually at the end there. So yeah, I think it's really hard to put stock in last year's playoffs, because it was, everybody was kind of starting from the exact same starting point, right? And so it was kind of up for grabs. The Tampa Bay Lightning were just a great team. I think they got better because they just got a chance to rest and they still had the same team. I think for the Jets, it just ruined their momentum. I think for the Oilers, it ruined their momentum. I think the teams that were really battling down the stretch, it just didn't work. So I don't. Kenny might have a different opinion, but
well, again, I mean, McDavid is the best player in the NHL by a landslide. Some people won't like that, but Connor McDavid is not sipped from the Stanley Cup yet. But does anyone think that he can't? Of course you don't. I mean, of course he can. He can put a team on his back and do it, but he needs to do it. That's the whole thing about playoff hockey. Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner have taken incredible strides in their game. The Leafs have taken strides in their team game. They haven't won a playoff series since 2004. So things are not always as they appear, is my only point. And again, back to Hellebuck. Until he does it, well, sure, you can have questions about it. But again, that doesn't mean that he can't do it. So again, you're right. I mean, are the Oilers being graded too critically for getting bounced by Chicago? Sure. But the Oilers have not proven to be a great playoff team. And this is their chance to have a crack at it. I mean, this might be the 80s all over again for Jets fans. That's the stark reality.
Yeah.
And and there are tons of parallels, right? The only difference is the Jets have a higher end goaltender. I mean, we know Bob Essensa did his job on a lot of nights, but didn't even get to play in Game 7 in 1990. But the difference back then was that those elite players were aided by the goaltending of Grant Fuhr and Andy Moog. But I mean, again, I'm not saying this is the akin to 90.
League. I mean,
of course it is.
I was still swimming around back then, but I don't.
My point is, those guys haven't won yet. So again, it's hard to win. So they will be given a chance to show it this year.
Oh, yeah, I just think the Jets have a better opportunity to build a better team than Edmonton. Yeah, you might not have the best player because you can do that. It was different than back then. You didn't, it's just a different league. There's a salary cap.
So the Oilers can never win because they have those two-star players?
You're saying that this could be the Jets, Oilers from the 80s all over again, and I don't think that's the case. I think the Jets can build a better team overall than the Oilers to contain McDavid. I think you can do it. I mean, look at the Tampa Bay model, man. Like, I think that's the exact model. You get the pieces that you need to play the game against whatever it was. The Lightning were too soft against the Blue Jackets, so they went out and got harder, right? Like, I mean, I don't think you can contain McDavid. You can be better. That team is going to have a tough time because you got to pay McDavid and Draisaitl a lot of money. The Jets can figure out a better way to do it. I just don't agree.
No, my point was that they have superstars that can take over the series. I wasn't saying who can build a better team.
Superstars that can do the same thing. They just have to do it.
No, they don't have superstars that can do the same thing as McDavid.
Caliber.
No.
Well, not the caliber, but that doesn't mean that someone.
It's just like Howardchuk was great. Hey, Howardchuk was great, but he wasn't Messier or Gretzky.
Right, but
that's my point. There's parallels in that front. That's all. I'm not saying who can build a better team. But again, Pittsburgh showed that they could do it with the same thing that you said. They didn't have a elite level defense core, but they got the job done because they had two of the best players in the league. They had depth, and then they got good goaltending.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Murray was unbelievable.
Well, but he played at an elite level, but Matt Murray wasn't considered an elite level goaltender that year.
No, but then
he took over from Marc-Andre Fleury because of an injury, right?
Sure. Yes, he did. But yes, and then he played in the next one, and yeah. Anyway,
guys, I want.
No, sorry. And again, I'm not trying to be too harsh here, and I just that wasn't what I was suggesting. I was just saying that.
Well, my feelings aren't hurt. Don't worry.
I know
Kenny's out here crushing dreams again tonight. Here we go.
The parallels are that the Jets feel like they could have heartache because the best player in the league could single-handedly beat them, like he did in 7 games out of 9 during the regular season.
Guys, I think it's a moot point because the Jets are going to have to go back next year to trying to figure out how to compete in the Central Division. They've got to worry far more about a team like the Colorado Avalanche than they do about meeting Connor McDavid because they'll need to get, for the most part, to the Western Conference Final before they need to worry about that. And it brings me to this question. Troy Stevens is telling us that Chevy delivered a premium roster to this coach. What has he done with it? I mean, I think I've made it clear in this space before. I mean, great on the offense, great on the goaltending. I think this is a flawed defense. And you guys had talked about it. That one Pittsburgh Penguins team is the one team that I can think of that has won the Stanley Cup that had all the problems. The year that Chris Letang went down
was hurt. Yeah,
everyone thought that was it for them. I thought it was it for them. They found a way to win. Matt Murray was a big part of that. Opportunistic scoring. I covered part of that series. I remember being in a game in Washington, and Washington was just all over them the entire game. But every time the puck went the other way, the Penguins would go down and score. The analytics in that series were off the charts. Washington should have won that series, took it to 7 games, weren't able to do so. But I take a look and I think about a lot of the stuff that has happened on this team this year, the style that they've decided to play right down to where they are right now, trying to focus on defense, and not even talking about focusing on offense when their offense has gone dry, when we know that's what this team is capable of. And I think so much of what you've seen happen this year has been in an effort to mask a defense that is nowhere near championship caliber. And so I do not agree with this at all. I think there's parts of this roster that Chevy has delivered that are premium, but I thought we saw it written all over Kevin Cheveldayoff's face when he failed to procure a big defenseman at the trade deadline. He was disappointed. He knew it was a problem. I think if you go back, that's around the time that we're talking about this team maybe starting to head in the wrong direction. I wonder if this Winnipeg Jets team thought, we just need to get through this season. At the beginning of the year, they thought, we got to get through until we can address this and get some help at or before the trade deadline. And when it didn't come, the realization and the reality hit that this team is going to have to mask its problems on defense to get anywhere. And I wonder how much that's affected this team's confidence. Ken?
2018, the Jets had the closest thing to a premium roster. Maybe you could argue 2018, 2019. And that year in 2018, the Jets won 9 playoff games. That was as close the Jets had to a premium roster. Their third pairing had 2 guys making $4.5 and $5.5 million. That was a luxury, right? So this year the Jets don't have a premium roster. They were a bubble team going into the year, and they remain a bubble team. So I don't call that a premium roster. There are pieces in the pipeline that can help improve the roster, and the Jets do have some depth, but I don't think this is a premium roster. I think this is a bubble team, and the Jets are probably going to find themselves in a bubble team situation where they're not going to be able to win 4 rounds. If they do, it would be a massive surprise to everyone. To your original question, Sean, do I think that the Jets have a letdown because they didn't add a top 4 defenseman? I don't know. Does it right now? Do the Jets look like a team that's one defenseman away?
No.
So then, if that were the case, if they let themselves down after that, that's on the players, right? I mean, I agree. The job of Kevin Cheveldayoff was to do his best to get a top 4 defenseman, but hang on, one more thing. The 2 teams that are ahead of the Jets right now, did they add a premium piece at the deadline? No, but because they were more comfortable with where their rosters were. The Leafs have a premium roster, but they still have question marks. So do the Oilers, but at the same time, the Oilers' defense has improved dramatically. I think adding Dmitry Kulikov was a smart addition, and I love the moves that Kyle Dubas made at the deadline for specifically Nick Foligno, but they didn't go out and add a 25, 35 goal scorer. Foligno has done that in the past, for sure.
They got the pieces they needed.
Right, big, strong guys. So great.
So here's my thing with this, and I've said this for a while now. Kevin Cheveldayoff hasn't done what he needed to do to supplement what he's done here. So what Kevin Cheveldayoff has done here is built a premium roster in terms of who he's drafted. And you can see that in the lineup with Ehlers, with Morrissey, with Heinola, with all the guys that he's drafted. What he hasn't done, there's failed to do here, and the only year that he got it mostly right was 2017-18 with Paul Stastny. That was a very shrewd addition to this club. But since the 2018-19 offseason, where they lost half the right side of their defense, or the whole right side of their defense, half of it, he did nothing to get it better, right? It was he lacks the creativity in my mind to put this team over the top. And I've said that. I mean, I've written it. I thought Kevin Cheveldayoff had to be more aggressive last summer, and he wasn't. I thought he had to be aggressive at the trade deadline, and he wasn't. I mean, the difference between him trying and getting something is massive in this league. And we are seeing it right now because this team still has the same problems that it has now for 2 or 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons at least, in terms of their defensive problems. Now, the 2018-19 season, something went wrong. It was more than just the kind of the sum of the parts. That it was a bigger issue, I think. But since then, there just hasn't been enough creativity. There hasn't been any moves to make the team better defensively. They got lucky on the Trouba deal, right? Because at the beginning of that, we can't look at Sean, we can't look at hindsight. They got Neil Pionk, and everybody wrote that Neil Pionk was nothing. I mean, because they didn't know.
Not everybody.
And well, maybe not. but the analytics didn't show a very paint a rosy picture of Neil Pionk. And then they went out and drafted Billy Heinlau, which again, they didn't know when they made the Trouba trade. So what they got for Trouba was essentially a bag of pucks to a lot of people. It wasn't going to replace Jacob Trouba. And the other thing we have to realize is that Josh Morrissey has not been the same since Jacob Trouba left, right? They have not got him another member, or at least a consistent, maybe it is Pionk, right? Or maybe it is DeMello, but they refuse to put those guys, or Paul Maurice doesn't put those guys together for maybe that, big guy, small guy kind of garbage that I really don't really like. I think you need to play your best players or put your players in the best position, regardless of their size. But that's another thing. Yeah, but Kevin Cheveldayoff just hasn't gone out and got the pieces that a Julian Brisebois has done, or an Armstrong did in Jim Armstrong did in Pittsburgh, right? There hasn't been that that creativity. That's just there hasn't been that focused kind of additions that this team needs. It's been lacking. I think he's kind of failed in what he's done, and I have a tough time with the argument any other way, because I don't know how you could make an argument saying that Chevy has done more than he needs, or has done an adequate job of supplementing the issues on his team by plugging the holes, because he just hasn't.
I'll say this about the Trouba deal. The Jets desperately wanted back in the first round that year, and they wanted back in for a reason, right? So the scouting staff knew that there was something there that they wanted. I think based on what this team has been able to do scouting wise, you have to give them credit for that. They wanted back in, and they ended up going and picking a guy that looks like he's going to be, I mean, they win this trade, right? And hey, they saw something in Pionk that the analytics guys didn't see clearly. They've brought him in, and it's worked. So, I mean, you can say that everyone thought that they got taken for a bag of pucks, but they didn't. So someone in the organization, when they made that trade, saw something, and what they saw has come to fruition. So because it didn't look like a good deal to the outsiders, maybe it's one of those situations where you have to.
Still set them
back.
I
don't think the Trouba trade has set them back at all. He was leaving regardless. But I'm going to come back. He was leaving regardless, Scott. You were losing that guy.
I'm not saying
here. I'm going to build on the point that you were making, because it's one that I've made a number of times, and I truly believe should be made more often. The idea that the Jets in 2019 were going to keep a team full of defense together, that 4 of them were potentially walking out the door, I think was a problem. I think the idea that you couldn't approach it by saying we're going to take 2 of these guys that we're going to lose and try and move them for assets that may stick around longer and take potentially a little bit of a hit, or at least play around and try and go there. And I think since then, the idea that the Jets have, I mean, what do we talk about the Jets?
I don't know.
Just let me finish. Yeah. Before they moved Line, when Line was here and Roslovic was here, a guy that they was a non-starter for Mark Stone a couple of years ago, and now is a throw-in another deal. The fact that they had so much talent up front and never used that in an effort down the stretch to say, we've got talent up front to spare. Let's move that and address our back end. I think that's a problem. So to your point, I don't let him off the hook. And I don't say that this was an unavoidable loss to lose all those defense at the same time. They made a choice. They wanted to stay heavy offensively up front. They wanted to hold on to every single last young player that they had, that they thought had talent and could do something. And rather than, I mean, this is the one thing, and you'll see it from Jets fans all the time. Every time that someone is talking about a trade, they want to give away nothing and get everything in return. And I do think that Kevin Cheveldayoff is a guy who wants to win every trade he gets. And why this name is eluding me right now. Oh, Rutherford. Jim Rutherford.
Not Armstrong, Rutherford, yes.
Jim Rutherford said he does not go out and try to win trades. I thought it was the weirdest thing I'd ever heard before. But he said, I don't go out and try and win trades. I try and make even hockey trades, because when I need something, I want to have access to other GMs who are going to be okay trading with me, because they know I'm going to give them something of value and get something back of value in return. And because of that, Jim Rutherford is while he was GMing, was always able to make those trade deadline deals and go and try and address what he thought his team needed because he would move something. And this is what I'm saying, the stockpile mentality in Winnipeg that I understand, because the feeling is players don't come here for free, but the stockpile mentality of holding on to everything that they've held on to and not addressing the defense, I think was a problem. It was not an unavoidable conclusion that the Jets were going to lose half their defense and be a team now that has struggled with that ever since. I think it still costs them to this day, and the window we've talked about them being in has been affected by their inability to take their strength up front and turn it into strength on the back end.
And the one thing I'll say, just before Kenny, you can talk, but I think that this is what shows. So Steve Yzerman trades Jonathan Drouin for Mikhail Sergachev, right? At the time, Jonathan Drouin is probably considered the better player of that deal. But they needed to move somebody to get better on defense. And Sergachev wasn't going to be the guy right away. But then look what he turned into. And I think the problem is that Kevin Cheveldayoff has a very tough time parting with essentially his children, the guy that the players he's drafted, right? Very tough. Name a player that he's drafted that he has traded, and don't say Trouba yet, that he has traded that hasn't been a forced deal. And there isn't anyone, right? It's Laine, it's Roslovic, it's Trouba. That's it. So I mean, they traded Eric Foley, but again, a different thing, not a premier player. The Jets have not made that big deal, moved a piece to try and make themselves better. And I know everybody was talking at one time, let's trade Nikolai Ehlers. No, that's not the right guy. But I think you could have probably.
Well, who is then? So hang on.
Well, the problem is they got rid of all the guys now so Roslovic's gone. They never turned him into anything. Whatever. It took long enough.
Well, they did.
Well, they did eventually. They turned him into PLD, but they turned they turned Laine into a second line center, which they needed, right? But then if you need a top 4 defenseman right now, shouldn't Heinola or Samberg or any of those guys be on the block simply because your window is now? Like you guys have talked about on your show, the window is now. Should you not be making that move now? Because once you have a banner up in this place, it doesn't matter if you have a Heinola or a Samberg left over, because what you have, sorry KO, but patience has been a virtue for 10 years here, and I think he's being facetious, but I think it doesn't matter. Tampa has a banner now, right? So they trade away whoever, it doesn't matter anymore. They won the cup. They have their cup. I mean, I don't. Would Jets fans be willing to trade Ville Heinola right now for a Stanley Cup? That's the question that you should ask yourselves. And if the answer is yes, then Kevin Cheveldayoff hasn't done his job. And I think for Kevin Cheveldayoff, if he could trade Ville Heinola for a Stanley Cup right now, he would do it. And I get it. I get Ville Heinola is a tough one, right? Like, it's a tough one, but it's always going to be tough. It's always going to be tough to make your team better when you have to trade talent for talent. And the Jets need to do that at some point, because it's just not working here. That's all I'm saying. So I don't think you're laughing at me. I think you're laughing at
I'm
the
not,
comment.
yeah.
So
Kenny, it's been too long since we've heard from you. What do you got to say, Ken?
Well, the player that the Jets were most after was not available basically at the deadline, and it wasn't just Heinola. It's trading Heinola and a first-round pick and another piece for 1 year and 15 games of Mattias Ekholm. And as much as I love Mattias Ekholm as a player, again, back to my original point, do we think that having Mattias Ekholm in the lineup makes the Jets a Stanley Cup favorite? Do we?
I mean, I
think you.
He improves their chance. He improves their chances.
I think
he's
you need
different than
him in a
Alexiak.
piece.
Right. He's different than Alexiak.
I agree.
You're adding a very solid guy. He's also different than David Savard, too. I mean,
of course he is, and he's under contract. But yes, Mattias Ekholm was the best player available, but then he wasn't available.
Well, I think every player is available if you pay the right price, Kenny. And the problem is, at what point is Chevy just going to run out of option? Like, when does the runway end for Cheveldayoff then? When? Like, if you're not going to pull the trigger and you're just going to hope the next guy and the next prospect is going to do it, and the next prospect, I mean, the problem with all these prospects that you're getting is that the players that you already have that are in their prime are just getting older. So what do you do at that point? I mean, if Mark Scheifele is 31 or 30 at the end of his contract and he's done, and Dylan Sandberg's only turning into the top tier defenseman, well, you've lost out on Scheifele's prime years. So I don't understand when is Cheveldayoff going to pull the trigger? Because if he's not, somebody else has to do it, and that's the hard truth of it.
Well, I mean, here Buffalo's got angst. Ristolainen wants out. The Jets have been in pursuit of Ristolainen for a long time.
Then
We'll
get
see.
him.
We'll see what the offer is. Hang on here. My thing with Heinola, guys, the best chance the Jets have for having a number one defenseman in their system right now, who's that player? He's already here. He's Ville Heinola. So, what?
Yeah, he's not getting played.
He's their best chance in this prime window to be their number one defenseman. So how do you trade him for a year and a half of one player?
Because
If
Ekholm
Ekholm is
a
under,
couple more years, because Wheeler's going into the dinosaur phase, and other guys. I mean, the thing is, if you're going to lose Kopp too, I mean, so what is it, right? Like, I mean, you're going to lose players going forward. That's just the way it is. And like this comment says, you're not getting UFAs, right? It's difficult. So do you not have to then bite the bullet and trade when you're? I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs were going to trade Nick Robertson. They just didn't have to in the end.
but he's not a number one defenseman.
It doesn't matter, Kenny. He's still one of their top forwards.
Of course it matters. We're talking about a team who's looking for a number one
I
defenseman.
understand
How hard are they to find?
but
They
Nick-
have one here.
I can hear you.
They
from
have
over
one.
there already. The point is that Nick Robertson is their ticket because they need a guy that is going to be cheap for many years with all those contracts they have, and they were still willing to give up. The reason for that is because they need to win a Stanley Cup, Kenny. They need to win a Stanley Cup, and should that not be the mentality here in Winnipeg? The same.
It's
It's
an
not
incredible
the same.
job by Dubas. He kept his best prospect.
Yes, but so how has Kevin Cheveldayoff not been able to do that too? I get Toronto's a better place to play and all that. Who gives? Oh, I almost swore. Who cares when if you're a good enough team, you will be a rental player. If Jamie Alexiak could have came here, he could have gone right back to Dallas. I mean, he's in the UFA. So I mean, I don't understand. Like, you have to go out and get your players. So we're far. I'd have to jump. I'd die on the.
Don't jump.
I'd die.
Please don't jump.
I'm not
Don't
going to
jump.
jump. I'm just
Talk
saying.
him down, Kenny.
I'm just saying. So our whole conversation is about number one defensemen and how hard they are to find.
I'm saying
you can't
my
give
point
up the one
is
who has the
that-
best chance.
My point is that Toronto was going to give up their best prospect. The Winnipeg's best prospect is Ville Heinola. So my point is that if you're willing, you have to be willing to give up something to make the move. And the Jets just don't seem like they're willing to do that. And so you're stuck in this cycle. It just keeps going. The wheels on the bus, they keep going around, but you're stuck in the mud. So you're not getting anywhere.
There had been some talk in the chat room. Ken, you touched on it slightly with the Buffalo situation, but if things trend in this direction, I hate playing the what if game. But if we get into a situation where the Jets find themselves out in the first round, we'll have plenty of time to talk at that point of what's going to happen with the coaching, what's going to happen with the GM. But do you expect, regardless, even if the Jets were to make a slight bit of a push, make it to the second round, third round, whatever, do you expect a lot of moves to be made this summer? You expect a lot of turnover on this roster? Significant, big move turnover?
I don't think there's going to be a massive turnover, but I think there's going to be moves coming for sure. I think the Jets' defense core will be improved internally by Dylan Sandberg and Ville Heinola being a regular. I think Logan Stanley's in the lineup. But if the Jets are not willing to play all three of those guys at the same time, then move one of them for an experienced top defenseman. Sorry, and just to reiterate my point about Heinola, I don't think Ville Heinola is a number one defenseman today. He's the Jets' best chance at a number one defenseman. Number one defensemen are almost never available via trade. Morgan Rielly is the Leafs' number one defenseman. He was drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay? I mean, Darnell Nurse is drafted by the Edmonton Oilers. So that's why you need to be very careful when it comes to moving those players. Yes, Tampa traded a third overall pick in Jonathan Drouin. No doubt
Montreal
about that.
treated Sergachev.
Great. Number 8 or whatever he was.
What does matter? He's the number one. He would have been their number one defenseman easy right now. Easy.
Sergachev,
100%. Running the power play. He's 10 years younger than Shea Weber. Come on. Like, I mean.
Oh yeah. Well, also people said it was a dumb move to trade PK Subban for Shea Weber. That move worked out pretty well for Montreal.
I did it. Did it? Yeah, did it? What have they done? What have they done?
Well, that's. I mean,
that doesn't mean that the player didn't play well there.
Yeah, it's.
I mean,
they didn't win the cup, but would they have won the cup if he would have stayed there? Is the question you have to ask back that other way. Regardless.
Anyway, sorry. In terms of changes, I mean, are there changes coming to the core? I mean, there was a big change to the core already this year with Laine moving out. If the Jets flame out and if their exit meetings go poorly, if Kevin Cheveldayoff thinks that this core can't win, then there will be big changes.
Hey, a big change here.
But what are the?
What's a big change here? Who are you trading? Scheifele?
I mean, I don't expect Mark Scheifele to be moved, but that would represent a big change, though. Yes, I mean the Jets should. But again, you can't always. I'm just saying you can't always rule on emotion. Scott, you were the one right from the very beginning. Don't trade Ehlers, which was smart.
Right.
But lots of people thought they should have done it. So you can't always listen to the vocal minority. Is my only point on that.
I don't think anybody other than this city was thinking trade, and not even this city, just a fan base saying trade Ehlers, right? Like I think everybody else, you pull anybody else in this league talking about trading Ehlers, it'd be insane. Like people thought that deal was insane to trade Nikolai Ehlers for Brett Pesce. What are you doing? I mean, you would have sewered yourself. You would have been screwed this year if they would have done that. That's insane. I mean,
he'd be on the top pairing. I mean, it would be a loss for sure.
And the Jets wouldn't have any scoring. We can see it right now, Kenny. Where is the offense without Nikolai Ehlers? Is there not a corresponding or a correlation between when Nikolai Ehlers went out and the lack of offense, the lack of creativity, the dumping and chasing, all this stuff? They can't do anything. The power play doesn't do anything because they can't get in the zone. And when they do, like Nikolai Ehlers is the guy that has done a lot for this team this year. I would argue he's their MVP on this team because of the dynamic. And I think we're seeing it right now with him out of the lineup. They are lacking a lot of the things that Ehlers brings to this team.
I agree. I've said it from the beginning. I think Ehlers has been excellent, and you and Sean both have him as MVP, and I definitely think he's in the conversation.
Guys, we're going to have to leave it there. It's time for us to shut her down here. Want to thank everybody for staying engaged and hot.
Great passion, Scotty. Great passion.
Hot.
And if people think that we're mad at one another, they don't know us. So.
No, I'm going to go hug Kenny later. Well, no, 6:30.
No, you can't. No, you can't. Save that for another day.
Want to thank everyone for joining us. We're going to be right back here in the same space tomorrow night, roughly around the same time, hopefully getting on around 10:30 after the show. You can come join us before the game on Instagram, 45 minutes before the game. Other than that, looking to try and it would be good to have a show where we could talk about a win, guys, but it's been a while. But
take it as it comes.
Let's see where we get. We'll take it as it comes, handle what we handle. Thanks for being so hot and so connected here tonight, everybody. Appreciate your time. Hope to see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a great one.